The billionaire was walking through a crowded street when he suddenly stopped. A poor teenage boy was sitting on the sidewalk, holding an old gold watch. The boy was trying to sell it. The billionaire stared at the watch. His heart began pounding. It was his father's watch. He stepped closer. "Where did you get that?" The boy looked frightened. "My mother gave it to me." "What's your name?" The boy hesitated. Then he quietly answered. "Noah Reed." The billionaire's face went completely pale. Reed. That was his father's last name. The boy looked at him and whispered. "My mother said my father was a good man." The billionaire swallowed hard. "Who was your father?" The boy looked down at the watch. "I don't know." Then he said something that changed everything. "But my mother says you might know him." Chapter 1, The Billionaire. Alexander Reed had everything money could buy. At 37, he was the CEO of Reed Global, a company worth billions. He owned luxury homes, private cars, a jet. But there was one thing money could never give him. His father. Alexander's father, Edward Reed, had died when Alexander was 12. Edward had built the family business from nothing. After his death, Alexander's mother told him, "Your father loved you more than anything." Alexander believed her. He grew up remembering his father as a hard-working, generous man. But there was one mystery. For several months before his death, Edward had frequently disappeared. Whenever Alexander asked where he went, his father simply said, "Some things are better kept private." Alexander never understood what he meant. Chapter 2, The Boy on the Street. One afternoon, Alexander was leaving a business meeting when he noticed a crowd gathered near a street market. A teenage boy was sitting on a cardboard box. His clothes were old. His shoes were worn out. Beside him was a small sign. "Old watch for sale." Alexander walked past. Then he saw the watch. He stopped. Something about it looked familiar. Very familiar. He walked back. "Can I see that watch?" The boy looked up. "Sure." Alexander picked it up. There was a tiny scratch across the glass. A golden symbol on the back. And inside the cover, a small engraved letter. E.R. Edward Reed. Alexander's father. His hands began shaking. "Where did you get this?" The boy answered. "It belonged to my mother." "Your mother?" "Yes." "What's your name?" The boy looked nervous. "Noah." "Noah what?" The boy looked down. "Noah Reed." Alexander felt as if the entire world had stopped. Chapter 3, The Offer. Alexander sat beside the boy. "Where is your mother?" "At home." "Is she okay?" Noah didn't answer. Alexander noticed the boy's eyes were red. Finally, Noah said, "She hasn't been well." "How long?" "A long time." Alexander looked at the watch. "I'll buy this." Noah nodded. "How much?" Alexander pulled out his wallet. "How about $100,000? Noah's eyes widened. But he shook his head. "No." Alexander was surprised. "Why not?" "My mother said never to sell it unless we absolutely had to." "Then why are you selling it?" Noah's voice became quiet. "Because we haven't eaten properly in 3 days." Alexander immediately put his wallet away. "You're coming with me." Noah looked frightened. "Why?" "Because I want to meet your mother." Chapter 4, The Small Apartment. Noah led Alexander through several narrow streets. They stopped outside an old apartment building. The elevator didn't work. They climbed 3 flights of stairs. Noah opened the door. Inside was almost nothing. A small table. An old sofa. A mattress. And a framed photograph sitting beside the window. Alexander walked toward it. He stopped. The photograph showed a young woman. Standing beside her was Edward Reed, Alexander's father. Alexander couldn't breathe. Noah noticed his expression. "You know him?" Alexander slowly nodded. "That man was my father." Noah stared at him. "My mother said he had another son." Alexander looked at Noah. "Your mother said that?" Before Noah could answer, a weak voice came from the bedroom. "Noah?" The boy ran inside. "Mom, there's someone here." The woman slowly sat up. She looked toward the doorway. When she saw Alexander, her eyes filled with tears. Edward's son. Chapter 5, The Truth About Edward. Alexander stood frozen. "Who are you?" The woman replied. "My name is Sarah." "Did you know my father?" Sarah nodded. "For many years." "Were you married to him?" "No." "Then who were you?" Sarah looked at Noah. "His mother." Alexander felt confused. "Why didn't my father tell us about you?" Sarah looked down. "Because he was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Sarah didn't answer immediately. Then she pointed toward the watch. "Your father left that with me." Alexander looked at it. "He told me that one day, if I ever needed help, I should show it to you." Alexander's voice became cold. "Why would I help you?" Sarah smiled sadly. "Because your father asked you to." Chapter 6, The Hidden Compartment. Sarah asked Noah to bring the watch back. She pressed a tiny button on its side. A hidden compartment opened. Alexander had never known it existed. Inside was a folded piece of paper. Sarah handed it to him. Alexander opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable. His father's. It said, "Alexander, if you're reading this, I've failed to tell you the truth." Alexander's eyes filled with tears. He continued. "Sarah saved my life once. Noah is my son. I know this will be difficult for you to understand. But please don't punish a child for the secrets created by adults." Alexander looked at Noah. The teenager stood silently in the corner. His face was full of fear. Chapter 7, The Night Edward Disappeared. Sarah explained what happened 20 years earlier. Edward had met her before Alexander's birth. They became close. But when Sarah became pregnant, Edward was already under enormous pressure from his family. His father wanted Edward to marry into another wealthy family. Edward refused. He wanted to take care of Sarah and Noah. But then something happened. Someone threatened him. They told him that if he publicly acknowledged Noah, the Reed family business would be destroyed. Edward tried to fight back. He secretly created a trust for Sarah and Noah. But before he could make everything public, he became seriously ill. He died before he could explain everything to Alexander. Sarah never received the money. She had no idea where the documents were. So she raised Noah alone. Chapter 8, The Missing Documents. Alexander couldn't understand. "My father left money for you?" Sarah nodded. "But we never received it." "Why?" "I don't know." Alexander immediately suspected something. He remembered the people who had controlled his father's estate after his death. One name came to mind. Victor Mason. His father's longtime financial advisor. Victor had handled almost everything after Edward died. Alexander called his legal team. Find every trust Edward Reed created. Hours later, they found something shocking. A trust had indeed been created. It contained millions of dollars. But the money had never reached Sarah. It had been transferred into another account. Then another. And another. Until it disappeared. Someone had stolen it. Chapter 9, The Family Secret. Alexander confronted Victor. The old advisor was now retired. Alexander placed the documents on his desk. "You stole my father's money." Victor looked at him. "You don't know what you're talking about. This trust was created for Sarah and Noah." Victor became silent. Alexander continued. "My father wanted to protect them." Victor sighed. "Your father was going to destroy everything." "Why?" "Because he wanted to reveal Noah publicly." Alexander stared at him. Victor continued. "Your grandfather threatened to cut him off." So? "So your father chose them over the company." Alexander realized the truth. His father had been forced to choose between his family and the empire he had built. But Edward had chosen his children. Both of them. Chapter 10, The Betrayal. Victor eventually admitted that he had hidden the trust. He believed Sarah and Noah would eventually disappear. But he never expected Alexander to discover the truth. Alexander immediately reported the financial fraud. The missing money was recovered. Sarah's trust was restored. But Alexander didn't stop there. He returned to the apartment. Noah was sitting beside his mother. Alexander looked at him. "You know what your father wanted?" Noah shook his head. "He wanted you to have a future." Noah's eyes filled with tears. "But I don't need your money." Alexander smiled. "I know. Then why are you helping us?" Alexander looked at the watch. "Because you're my brother." Noah stared at him. Neither of them spoke. Then Alexander opened his arms. Noah slowly stood. And the two brothers hugged. Chapter 11, The Watch. Months later. Sarah received the medical treatment she desperately needed. Noah returned to school. Alexander arranged a scholarship for him. But Noah kept one thing. The old gold watch. One evening, Alexander asked, "Can I see it?" Noah handed it to him. Alexander opened the hidden compartment. There was another message. He had never noticed it before. A tiny sentence was engraved inside. "A family isn't defined by the secrets that separate us, but by the love that brings us back together." Alexander smiled. "That sounds like Dad." Noah nodded. "Yeah. Red Heart final scene." 1 year later. Alexander stood beside Noah at the opening of a new community center. The building had been funded by the Edward Reed Foundation. Its mission was simple. Help families who had nowhere else to turn. Noah looked at Alexander. "Do you think Dad would be proud?" Alexander looked at the old photograph. "I think he would." Noah smiled. "Even though we didn't know each other?" Alexander put his arm around him. "We do now." They stood quietly. For years, Alexander had believed his father left him a billion-dollar company. But now he understood. His greatest inheritance wasn't money. It was a brother. A family he never knew existed. And the truth hidden inside an old gold watch. The boy who had been selling the watch because he was hungry had unknowingly returned something far more valuable. He had returned a family to the billionaire.